I was looking at the DLC for the original Dark Souls 2, and one of them is just $30. Dark Souls 2 upgrade to DX11, no content, 5 user reviews,
And
and
it costs $30?
it's the upgrade to the Scholar of the First Sin if you own the original Dark Souls 2.
What the
But
fuck?
the two reviews are just underrated gem and nice.
Incredible.
Anyway, welcome back to the podcast, episode 18, lucky number 18. I was
My
cleaning.
goodness, we're already on 18.
It's
It really has been 18 weeks since we started analyzing the lives of Russian oligarchs.
yeah, and we'll continue to do so until the end of time.
Hmm.
You know what? I was just cleaning out my desk the other day, and like, okay. So first of all, I don't have a desk, right? I have a table with like two halves of a filing cabinet underneath, and stuff just kind of goes in there to die, right? So I was going through
Right.
it the other day, and I was just cleaning it out, and there are layers to it. There's like geological strata. I haven't emptied this in years. I found so many like Christmas cards. Some of them are from people who are now dead, and I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, holy shit!" Because I was just looking through this, and I was seeing like I was seeing something a friend of mine wrote, and I was like, "Oh, this person's been dead for 4 years." That's not something I was ready to just get hit by on a Thursday afternoon. Um,
yeah.
and I was also looking through, and I found, well, I found my fucked up dice. I found my actual D3 along with other like weird dice just sitting loosely in there.
Man, I hate those.
And I also found, well, I found uh, some bags of toxic waste that I don't know how long they've been in there for. Um, Toxic waste, the candy, the sour candy toxic waste, not actual toxic waste. But I just got like a bag of this, and I opened one of them up, and you know how dynamite sweats, like nitroglycerin sweats after a while?
Yes.
That's what these candies were doing. I don't know how long they've been in there, but I
Oh,
opened.
that's
It's supposed to be like a little
terrifying.
hard candy with like a sour coating on the outside, and it was just sort of slimy with a rock in the center. Um,
Oh God.
yeah, I tried one of
It's
the.
like when you leave an M&M in your car, like a peanut M&M, and the whole outside melts, and you just have like slop and a peanut.
Yeah, I tried the one of the apple ones, and um, I still am having acid reflux like 5 days later. So
That's not good.
yeah, and
Don't eat things you find in your desk that you suspect have geological strata on them.
it's because there's layers to it. It's like I can tell some of this is dating back like 10 years, and I can tell
Hmm.
exactly when each one of the things went in there.
Hmm. Sounds like your decision making needs a couple more layers if you were eating that candy.
Yeah. But my favorite thing that I found is I found the scroll, right? I found the ancient text.
Like a spell scroll?
Yes, pretty close.
Awesome.
I have I used to have like a Rubik's cube and a Rubik's pyramid because I fancied myself. I was like, oh, I could do a Rubik's cube.
Uh,
That could be my bit. And this is the instruction manual for this knockoff Chinese Rubik's pyramid, with Chinese instructions and poorly translated English underneath. I'm going to read a few choice sections for you, if that's right.
sure, go for it.
Using instruction of Shengshu triangular pyramid-shaped cube. Angle block on the base block rotate freely. In the reduction process, angle block does not play any role, can be neglected. That's actually true. Uh, Cube from another direction to turn without the red base block into the next diagram. General at this time, there are 3 edge blocks direction or the wrong place, sometimes 2. Then you can swap any red-faced edge blocks as the switching point, and dislocation edge blocks, perhaps to swap a few times, you can restore. You can restore. Congratulations! Make the red edge block in the plane. This is very easy. Try to understand.
I'd like to think that you somehow wrote the intonations in there, but I know you didn't.
Hey, I mean, Chinese is
So
a tonal language, so I just picked it up from there.
Did you write this in Chinese?
No, but it's written in Chinese above the English.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Chinese instructions and poorly machine translated English underneath.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's I bet anybody should be able to solve a triangle of Rubik's fucking pyramid.
It's actually extremely easy. The pyramid is way easier than the cube. Um,
Really.
because you don't have to worry like the instruction said, you don't have to worry about the edge, the 4 points. You can just leave them. All you need to do is get the middle to line up, and that's pretty easy. There's a couple of like just basic moves you can do to get there. I didn't look up a tutorial. I just figured out the pyramid. I never figured out the cube. I didn't like the cube as much. I tried following a
Yeah.
tutorial for the cube once, but I forgot how to do it. But the pyramid, was able to just sit down and figure it out. So humble brag. Anyway, we got a new subscriber
Fascinating.
since the last episode.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we got
Like on the YouTube?
on the YouTube. We have 3 subscribers now, and we got another person liked the video that it was not me or you or your girlfriend, who are currently the only people who watch this podcast. So
That's crazy. Well, we still have no followers on the Spotify. So if either of our subscribers are taking a gander into the contents of this episode, go ahead and check out this.
no,
we'll
one
put
of
all
the
these episodes
subscribers, one of the subscribers is me, and the other is you. So there's only one unique subscriber that's actually real.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, bud.
Actually,
Look
is
at our
that true?
Spotify.
Let me check. Let me check and make sure I didn't subscribe to this. Yeah, no, it is me. We only have one real person watching our videos.
Can we see who it is?
No, because they don't make their subscriptions public. You made your subscriptions public for some fucking reason, which is why I was able to see you.
I don't know. I think is that not default?
I
feel like that's the default setting
I am not sure.
because I have no recollection of ever changing it to be public, and I don't know why I would. So
This is a great bit. We're keeping this all in.
I would assume that's the default.
Yeah, so, well, I talked a lot last episode, so maybe both of us will talk a little bit more this episode, because for maybe the first time ever, we actually wrote show notes for this podcast. Getting a real subscriber encouraged us to put the tiniest bit of effort into this shit. So, yeah, you came up with a question. I wrote a couple of strange scrolls on the Google Doc, and let's talk about it. Do you want to introduce the question?
Yeah. So this is kind of a question that I've been posed before, and I've never really known how to. Like I've been able to give an answer, but each time I've given the answer, it's changed a little bit depending on who I'm talking to, depending on the context that the question is given. And I don't know how much we've talked about this in previous episodes, but if you couldn't tell, the both of us, Cube and I, are pretty adamant tabletop RPG players.
You more than me, but yeah.
Yeah, you definitely I more than you, but you do tabletop stuff as well in the form of Warhammer. And Warhammer, some people role play when they play Warhammer, so there's an element to that in this. Yeah, and so kind of what we want to talk about today is what does it really mean to like role play? Because you have the very like literal definition of it, and if you look at the word for what it's saying, you are playing a role. And so
That's
from
so
like
true.
from like a cinematic shut the fuck up. From like a cinematic point of view, if you're like acting, which is where this originates, you are playing a role in a play, or you're playing a role in a film. You are literally playing a role. Although it is kind of been like broadened into being used to describe how people play things like role-play games or tabletop RPGs. You can role play while you're playing like a video game like Skyrim, or you can role play while you're playing something like Dungeons and Dragons. It differs. I think it differs how you do it based on the setting that you're in.
So, to elaborate, would you like to elaborate a little bit more on your background with tabletop RPGs, and where you're approaching this from?
Yeah, sure. So I guess my primary background when it comes to this is that I'm a big fucking nerd.
This is
Um,
true.
I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for a number of years, doing kind of both roles, although probably mostly DMing at this point, as far as like active hours of play go. And even that is, I think, something we'll get into the difference between role playing as like a storyteller versus a player in that story. But I'm a big fan in general of just like stories and well written narratives, and like I can appreciate good storytelling for what it is. And I think, in my opinion, that is the core of what makes the difference between like good and bad role playing. Um, but my general background is mostly of that of a TTRPG player.
I have some experience with TTRPGs. I was really into Dungeons and Dragons when I was a young man, and then I was away from it for many years. Actually, got back into it through I still painted the minis, and the minis led me to Warhammer, and then that sort of naturally brought me back into Dungeons and Dragons because a lot of people are in that space, and from there I was exploring some other systems as well. Um, I usually end up DMing. I don't think I'm very good at it, but I usually end up doing it, so I guess I'm a DM too. um, it is very difficult to properly maintain uh, that sort of storytelling because it's a very collaborative setting for TTRPGs.
Yes.
Um, One of the other things I would like to bring up, because it is relevant here, is you mentioned briefly video games. I think that sort of environment, video games, solo RPGs, any sort of environment where the role playing is constructed entirely of your own volition, is something that does pop up and has different constraints. I think that with something like Skyrim or any other Elder Scrolls, any sort of CRPG like that, you can create a character, but you have to put more effort into maintaining it and sticking with it, and the game systems don't necessarily allow for that. A lot of these games call themselves RPGs, but the actual role playing aspect is not always super deep or well developed. It's usually entirely something that you, the player, have to project onto the game because it's not
Mhm.
something that the game can really handle with its systems. The
Mhm.
instant you try and codify it into a system, it's never going to be enough for something that someone wants to do. It's not going to exist in the game. So
Yeah.
it is something that is entirely driven on your own, and I think that there are different considerations with that versus bouncing off of other people in a more collaborative setting, which also can lead to a very different environment.
Mhm. And I think it's important to note in the context of video games, just kind of continuing to use Skyrim as an example, role playing in a video game where you are placed into a role. Skyrim, you make your character. You do whatever you want. You have your character creation. You can choose how to build your character, what weapons you use, what spells you use, the factions you associate with, the quests you do, and stuff. Most of that is your choice, but you cannot change the fact that you are the Dragonborn and you were put here to
Yeah,
defeat Alduin and save the realm, pretty much. That is the role that you have been placed into. And so you can play into that role if you go through the game with the mindset of I am the Dragonborn. You're going to find that the game caters to that kind of mentality while you're playing. And I think that is its own form of role playing. I think there's little difference between that and like an actor in a movie because they are playing a role that they have been given. I don't think it necessarily takes away from the quality of role play. It's just a different kind. And if anything, it's a much easier kind, a much more introductory kind of role playing compared to like constructing an entire role yourself.
I think that's definitely true. Um, people usually think of role-playing as something like D&D, which has a robust system for creating your own class and style of gameplay, but also pretty much complete free reign in creating the actual story of your character, your backstory, why you're here, why you're participating with this party, whatever. Versus something like Skyrim. Skyrim is not the greatest example in a lot of ways because it doesn't force you to. Skyrim doesn't force you to choose between something like assassins or mages or whatever. You can kind of do everything, and there's not really any whatever. Skyrim is not the greatest example of this, I think, because it doesn't fully let you dive into a character that you want to create. You have some aspects that are fixed, like you are the Dragonborn, you are forced into saving the world, but who you are doesn't really matter beyond that. Your character has nothing really to distinguish them beyond what you put into them, and if you maybe pick the snarky dialogue option once or twice. And if you go further back to something like Daggerfall or like Wizardry or just other completely different RPGs, some of them have just a complete focus on the dungeon crawling, and all the character stuff is just absent, really. Like Wizardry, again, it's like, oh yeah, there's an evil wizard, kill him, and your characters are expected to die. You're controlling multiple characters as well, which is part of the reason, and we can get into how role-playing evolved from wargaming. But you are able to basically say whatever you want about your characters because they just don't exist. There are no mechanics for this is your faction reputation or anything like that. Something like Daggerfall, you do have something like faction reputation, but there's really not deep personal relationships you can have with NPCs or anything like that. It's just kind of, is my character the kind of person who's going to murder someone, or is he not going to do that? Who knows? He literally doesn't exist beyond being some kind of dungeon crawler golem.
Yeah, and I think Skyrim definitely fits into this kind of at like the far corner of a spectrum of role-playing games in a sense, because Skyrim provides both a very rigid world and relatively rigid options. You definitely have like choice in what you do in the game, but there's a limit to how much that choice will impact who you are as a character. Whereas compared to something like Dungeons and Dragons is the far opposite end of that spectrum, where you have absolute freedom in the style of the world and the choices that you make. It is 100% up to you. And so I think if we were kind of like to equate this to like a political graph, like a 2-axis spectrum.
Yeah, we got to get political on this podcast.
Yeah, we got to get political about this. I think like Skyrim, if we were to say like the y-axis is world rigidity and the x-axis is choice rigidity, or I guess setting rigidity and choice rigidity. Skyrim would be at the far top right, Dungeons and Dragons would be in the bottom left, and then something like I see you mentioned in here Kenshi. You're familiar with Kenshi? Would be I would argue in kind of the top left, where the world itself, you can't really do a whole lot to change the world. It's a fairly rigid setting, but you have nigh complete freedom to do whatever the fuck you want in that game, and there are consequences for those actions.
Yeah, Kenshi is a good example because it has the ability to, there are other factions that exist in Kenshi, and you can kill their leaders, and they cease to exist, and their cities become ruined, and if you go there, there's just going to be bandits or whatever. You can assist in wars between different factions, you can do all this stuff. So Kenshi has a very interactive world, compared to something like Skyrim, I would say probably more interactive, because the only real world changes I can think of in Skyrim are the Civil War, which is I don't even want to get into it. I enjoy Skyrim, but Skyrim had a death grip on me when I first played it until I picked up Dark Souls, and that replaced that death grip. But I have soured on Skyrim significantly in the years since I first played it, because it is well crafted, I think, but whatever. I've soured on Skyrim significantly in the years since I first played it. But the reason that I put Kenshi on there on the show notes was because that is something that I was thinking of as role playing a faction versus a character. Something like RimWorld or Kenshi, where again you can go full solo in RimWorld, you can go full solo in Kenshi, but usually you have a smaller party of maybe 3 to 5 people starting out for a while, and then maybe you might have more, but you only really care about a small collection of them. This is similar to, again, something like Wizardry, where you have a small party of people that you care about in terms of their stats, and you can project a personality onto them, but they don't necessarily, you don't know them as intimately as you would a character that you've created for a tabletop RPG. But you still have a lot of freedom in how you build the character. It's not something like, again, your character in the Elder Scrolls where you're always the hero of some prophecy or the other, you always have some mission. You have pretty much complete control over what these people are doing. Your pawns in RimWorld or your, they don't have names, just your characters in Kenshi are also heavily influenced by randomness and sort of emergent storytelling. That dice tell stories aspect that you see sometimes in tabletop RPGs. You might get a bad raid in RimWorld or Kenshi, and your character might lose an arm, and now they have to get a prosthetic arm or something like that. And that's something that just happens in the game, but that's a part of this person's character now. And if you take a slice of what your party looks like at any given point in time as you're going through this game, it might evolve really dramatically as things happen to them from the outside. Similar, Wizardry, because I keep going back to this example, kind of has that, where your party members can die and maybe they can't get revived or whatever, and your composition changes, but it's not nearly as in-depth. That's something that you get, that sort of emergent storytelling does a lot of the heavy lifting in role-playing, as we're calling it as a broad term, a larger party of people, where you're not able to craft everything in just what one person is having. You're not able to craft the backstory for one person, but you are able to see random events that happen to them and say, like, oh, maybe this person is shaped by having a different, maybe having a prosthetic arm or something like that now. Maybe that conflicts within RimWorld. They might be a human purist. They might not want to have a prosthetic arm, and that's causing a conflict with them. And it's doing a lot of the work for you, where you can kind of just, you start out from a few basic traits, some things happen, and you, the player, are kind of filling in the rest mentally. And you can take that in whatever direction you want.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also like a difference from a player's point of view when you're playing as a faction or you're playing as a single character, because the types of decisions that you make are just on a completely different scale.
100%.
And I think that's one of the kind of key core components of role play is changing how you make decisions, because a big part of it is accepting that it's not you yourself. It is not your decision to make. It is your character's decision to make, or your faction's decision to make, and it is your responsibility as the role player to kind of take on the role of that character or faction and make the decision for them in the way that you think they would make it. I think that's one of the most important parts of kind of interactive role playing, and it changes completely differently depending on the scale of what you're doing. And I think it can almost be kind of correlated to like low level and high level Dungeons and Dragons.
Exact 100%.
Because like a high level character is making similar decisions to like an entire faction of people in something like RimWorld. Like if you need to choose in like a city building game how to delegate resources after like a plague has hit that is going to affect, a large number of individuals within your settlement, but it's still you role playing as that larger entity when you're making that decision. And so you can choose to either take it as like you could choose kind of what stance to make the decision from. You can do it either as like a benevolent overlord that wants the best for everybody, regardless of the consequences, or as like a harsh dictator that prioritizes the prosperity of the state at the expense of its people and stuff like that. So there's different kind of identities that you can assume when you're role playing as a larger faction. Whereas when you're role playing, even if you're role playing as like a single powerful individual who might have the ability to influence on a larger scale or on a faction or state level scale, you're not making those same kinds of decisions.
It's very different to try and be the government versus the president.
Yeah, like you have to decide not what would this faction do. It's what decision would this character lead this faction into doing, and it just kind of it adds another layer when you kind of look at it at those scales. But there's a very fundamental difference between role playing as like a large entity and role playing as a singular character, especially with just kind of the amount of depth that you can go into it with things, because there's different kinds of depths when you're working with either role playing as like a large faction or a single character. Because if you're playing as like Billy Bob Joe, who grew up on the frontier with mommy Jan and daddy fucking Gerald, right? Then all three of those people could be like your character and all of his relatives and his parents and his friends and stuff. They can all have like individual personalities and backstories, right? And so they like you can choose how your character was raised and like how you want them to be, and through that you generate a kind of backstory and you can get other characters out of this. Compared to like a larger faction like Kenshi, you don't really have as much direct control over the history of the people in your faction. You more so have control over the history of the faction itself. And so it's just a different kind of storytelling. And I think
kingdom
kind
versus
of
the king. You have
very much so
over the history of those characters, and that's why the emergent events like losing a limb, or maybe they get delegated one task and they're really good at it or something like that, that helps build a backstory and a character for them when they have literally nothing to start out with. If you're randomly deciding to give this person one, like a really heavy weapon, and they train with that and they get good at it, and it's like now they're the heavy weapons person, and they just kind of, okay, they're just a pile of stats at the beginning, and now they've evolved into, okay, I'm going to give this person heavy armor, I'm going to give them a heavy weapon, and now they've just become this juggernaut archetype, and they fill a very specific role within your party. Even if they don't have a character, they still have character. They might not have a story, but they still have a very clear archetype that they fit, and there's a way that you're thinking of them when you're looking at it from the top-down perspective of, oh, I need a bruiser, I'm going to pick this person and send them in. Even if it's not really role-playing, because you're not actually sitting down and you're making this in-depth character, they still have a role that they are playing.
Yeah, and I think there's also like the amount of detail that you are able to go into when it comes to the like statistics of your character can also, I think, it depending on how you look at it or how you treat them, they can either help or hinder the like quality of storytelling that you can achieve when you're playing a character. And I think like different role-playing systems, kind of leaning more into TTRPGs, definitely attribute a different level of detail to this kind of attribute. Because when you take something like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition especially is comparatively a very simple system.
Yes.
There's not really a whole lot going on when it comes to character creation. You pick your class, your species, a couple class details. When you get high enough level of subclass, and then if spellcasting is probably the most complicated thing in that system, and that's about it. You have your feats, you have other abilities, but it's all pretty cut in stone. Like I literally have the player's handbook right here, and it's maybe a couple millimeters thick. It's like it's a hefty rule book and such. But this includes
probably like an inch thick.
Yeah, it's like about an inch thick, which is huge, by the way. But this includes like it's a very a small section of it is pretty much all of the information you would need to make a character. The rest of it is how to play the game, and then the back half is spells.
Yeah.
Right. If you compare that to something like the Pathfinder core rulebook, it's like 3 times the thickness, right? There's just a lot more going on with that system. And so that introduces more options for your character from a statistics point of view, from like an attributes point of view, but it does not inherently change how in depth you are able to go with your storytelling. It gives you a larger baseline for like options to work with when it comes to like the statistical happenstance of actually playing the game. But when it comes to role play, I would argue that there's not that much of a difference between
It's still pretty
most
open-ended.
systems.
Looking at other systems, you don't play Warhammer, so this won't make as much sense to you. But recently-ish, I ran a game of Dark Heresy, which is the Warhammer 40k RPG system. And it has a very interesting sort of character creation. Well, okay, its class system is just weird. It's more like what Pathfinder does, but the balance, we found it was kind of fucked. Anyway, it has a very in-depth character creation system where you pick your archetype of your homeworld, which could be like a feral planet, it could be a civilized planet, it could be like a city, like hive planet. It can be all this stuff, and then you roll for a bunch of different character traits, a flaw, all that stuff. But unlike the D&D 5th traits and flaws, where it's kind of just like, okay, this technically exists, they have many more options, and they're not afraid to get a little bit weirder with it. Like, one of my players was rolling a Psyker, which is a wizard. And in the Warhammer 40k setting, magic is extremely dangerous. Psykers are barely tolerated and kept on a very tight leash and are distrusted by a lot of people. And he rolled all the traits, like 4 different tables. He was rolling the traits that made him a devout servant of the God Emperor, who is like the greatest Psyker. And so he was like, oh, I'm betrothed to the Emperor in spirit. Oh, I'm this, that, and the other thing. Oh, the Emperor is my bae. I'm the Emperor's boy wife, or whatever. And he was rolling all this. He didn't like choose any of this. He was just chose to roll on the tables instead of picking one. And he wound up with this like really hyper zealous character who was not a preacher, or a cleric or whatever, which is one of the classes that can be, a preacher of the God Emperor. He was the Psyker, which is reviled by the population of the Imperium. And so he just rolled this sort of character all on his own, and it was just like, well, I guess I'm playing this character. So he didn't really have an idea of what he wanted to play going in, so he just picked that and was like, okay, this is fine. And if you didn't want to have your character be rolled for you, you could just pick the traits or just ignore them and make your own. But I do think that having a good option for people to roll their characters and roll like strong personality traits if they don't really have an idea of what they want to do going in, having the option to roll those traits can be helpful. But they have to actually like be strong. I think that doing it like what D&D does sometimes, where they're pretty wimpy, all things considered, it's just like, oh yeah, my fatal flaw is I'm proud, or I care about my friends and I'll risk my life to save them, or whatever. That doesn't have any sauce. You need to have a little bit of sauce. Find some. You need to be, oh yeah, I'm chemically castrated because I'm bound to the Emperor in life and death, and I'm going to be his bae, which is one of the options you can roll in Dark Heresy.
Which, honestly, I'm a big fan.
It can be fun if it works out well. Sometimes you roll a frustrating character, but again, you're not. I mean, the rules might say otherwise. I haven't checked specifically, but like, if I'm DMing, you can play whatever character you want as long as it makes sense.
I'm flipping through the player's handbook right now because I was curious. Because I have the 2024 player's handbook.
Well, I actually have the 2014 one right next to me, so.
And I'm trying to find, because I remember in the 2014 one, it was either in the class or in the backgrounds. For each background, they had like a table you could roll on for like flaws and such. And I'm trying to find it.
Background.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it in the the 2014 one. Honestly, or the 2024 one. I don't know where it is.
I think it's on a per background basis. This is gonna make for great audio content.
Yeah, flipping through books.
Yeah.
Just I gotta satiate my curiosity here.
Okay,
I'm
here, yeah.
curious.
So like Sage has, yeah. Okay, I'm on page 136, 137. This is just in the middle of the background section.
Mm-hmm.
And so like Outlander has Origin, where you can roll on like what you were doing. It's got the gameplay stuff for that, and it's got a D8 table for personality traits and a D6 tables for ideals, bonds, and flaws. And they're just broadly marked as chaotic, lawful, good, evil, neutral, any for like ideals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're fine. They can be the building blocks for if you want to build a character, but I think sometimes having more extreme character archetypes can actually be more helpful. It's like that art exercise where you draw a weird little scribble and then everyone is supposed to make a picture incorporating that scribble into it. It's like, what the hell am I going to do with this scribble? But you got to find a way, and that can lead to some neat ideas and brainstorming.
Yeah, I honestly, like, I don't see them at all in here. I don't know if they got rid of them or if they moved them, but they're just straight up, like, not in the character creation section.
I mean, role-playing has no place in Dungeons.
I don't know. I play the game to tell a story, so some people don't, and that's okay.
Yeah, can we talk about the different styles of roleplay? Because we have spoken about this at length, you and I.
This is true. We have. You keep bringing up how you love playing weird little guys.
Yes, I am a big proponent of weird little guy roleplaying for a variety of reasons. I like characters that have. I like characters that have a bit of a gimmick. It shouldn't be too crazy of a gimmick, but for instance, I played once a dwarf monk. He was using the astral self subclass, so basically the stand user monk. He hated magic because he was a dwarf, but his stand, that's not magic. That's just good old ancestor worship. That's just because his name was like Godfrey the 357th or something like that. And that was the spirit of Godfrey the First watching over him, who looked exactly the same but was 5% taller. And, you know, like, it's comedic. It's like a little weird little guy bit, but it's got, you know, it's not a crazy gimmick, right? You can take it in a bunch of different directions, and I was joking with, we had like a wizard in the party, and he was a friend of mine, and we would go back and forth, and they'd be like, oh, I hate the magic, or whatever, and it's, you know, it's fun. It's a good baseline for stuff like that to happen. But pick a little gimmick for them to have. I think that weird little guy role-playing, as I like to call it, and this is not like the craziest, you can get crazier with it if your table is fine with it, but again, you should be careful to not be too annoying or take up too much time. I think that weird little guy role-playing is fun because it gives you a couple of bits to sort of build off of with the role-playing. You can develop some banter with the party based on that, but it's also not, you don't have to get too into it. You're not doing like a serious, emotional, really heartfelt character. And that is something that in role-playing games I like if I can get it, but I am rarely in a situation where everyone is willing to commit 100% to doing like actual, intense, like real role-playing, like trying to really act it out. And everyone needs to be on board for something like that. So
you need a very connected, special group of people to kind of do that with. It's hard to do that with people you don't already like have a sort of intimate connection with. But completely just like backpedaling a second.
Of course,
I think I found it. And I think it's important to note that so in the 2014, so the original 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons character sheet, there was an entire little section on the front of your character sheet for your flaws, your bonds, and your ideals. That is gone.
And your personality trait, I think, too, right?
That is gone. That's not a thing anymore.
Oh, okay.
That is actually just not part of the character sheet. And I found what they replaced it with. There is a D4 table. There are 2 D4 tables for each ability, and it's if you have high value in that ability or if you have low value in that ability, and they are 1, word descriptors.
Like ability
like-
scores, like strength, wisdom.
Like if you have high strength, you roll a d4. You are either muscular, sinewy, protective, direct. If you have low constitution, you roll a d4. Frail, squeamish, lethargic, fragile. That like there's that, and then there's the alignment, and they're all just one word descriptors. Like there's nothing in this book that actually gives you any kind of table to roll on that's like like you're a cleric and you worship a dead god or something.
I don't like that, but for maybe a weirder reason. If you're just basing your character's traits off of what their ability scores are, I kind of like the idea of having a character who doesn't match the ability scores, if that makes sense. Like, one of the reasons why I played that dwarf monk was because I thought the idea was funny and I had never seen that particular race and class combo before. I don't know if it's meta. I don't keep up with fucking D&D meta. I just play stuff that's funny.
Nobody cares about the meta.
Okay, good. I wanted to pick a dwarf and have be like a strength monk, even though I know that's not a great combination because they usually focus on wisdom and dex. But I like the idea of being a dwarf strength
one of the
monk.
characters, one of the characters that I DM in like the campaign that I'm actively running, her original idea for her monk was to be a strength monk. And I was like trying to work with her on that. I'm like, okay, that's a really cool idea. I like the idea of a monk using strength. That can work. The abilities do kind of align with that in certain scenarios. But I want to make sure you do understand that a monk's primary damaging ability is not strength. It is dexterity. And she was like, oh.
Yeah.
So there really are times where it's like there's people that do it for the sake of trying to do something, and there's people that are doing it out of a simple misunderstanding of the rules.
It does, considering that normally hand-to-hand is strength.
Yes.
I mean, that's an understandable reaction to have.
Oh, very much so.
In my particular case, it didn't matter because when I was rolling my ability scores, because our DM insisted on rolling like a psycho, I accidentally rolled crazy fat and got like 2 18s and not a single stat under 15.
Oh my god!
When I was rolling his stats, because I like the idea of being a strength monk, but I was like, okay, I guess he's an everything monk. But is it? I mean, it 100% makes sense for like high strength, and it's like, okay, your character is now muscular or whatever. Like, again, I'm not saying that's a stupid thing to have in the book. That makes perfect sense. But having it be restricted to having that be what replaces personality traits and kind of having it just be tied to your ability scores, I kind of like the option of having a character that doesn't match what their ability scores say they should be, if that makes sense. I know that that feels stupid, but I like the idea of having a bard who's also just really strong for no fucking reason, and it's never brought up because you rolled really high at character creation and he just has a strength score of 17 for no reason. It's, I mean, again, you can choose to ignore any number of these rules. You can make up whatever you want. This is just a guideline, and it makes complete sense as a guideline. I like having strong opinions. This is fucking stupid. I like having strong personality traits that take a stand. I was like, again, like the Dark Heresy ones where it's just something crazy. Going with more generic ones that make sense and just match what your character already is kind of feels lame to me. Again, you can change it to be whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, but
because a lot of times like stronger personality traits are just more fun to role play. Like if you have my favorite ones are the ones that are like how do I say this without being racist?
Great, fantastic start to any thought.
Okay, maybe I actually shouldn't.
This is fantasy, staying in, by the way. I'm not cutting this
fantasy
out.
That's okay. I don't expect you to. But I think it's so much fun to just like
fantasy racism, is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, that's kind of the
I
segue
was
that I
just
was leaning
talking with
into.
another DM friend of mine about fantasy racism the other day. It's okay.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. We're mature.
Okay.
We
Okay.
both
Because
play
I
Elder
think
Scrolls. We know how this goes.
yes, we do. As much as a fan of the lusty Argonian maid as I am,
Dude, that play has 7 acts. Do you know that?
no.
It's in the book in game. It's listed as being like Act 7, Scene 1.
Hmm.
Can you imagine?
Yeah,
I can imagine.
I would act.
I think
I
this
would
is
play
a
in that play.
BDG bit. I might just be stealing a BDG bit here, but anyway.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know what that means. Um,
Bacon, lettuce, tomato.
like the sandwich.
This is fucking stupid.
That's BLT.
We're cutting this all out. We're cutting. God, this first fucking 49 minutes is unsalvageable.
No, but like, or sometimes taking like a stance as a character that is so drastically opposed to what you believe in real life is fun sometimes to kind of explore an opposite outlet. So if you're like a decent human being and you accept that all people are like, equal in the fact that we're all just humans, and you're playing like a human barbarian that just fucking hates elves, sometimes it's a lot of fun to just be like an extremist.
I did that. How do I say this in a way that will keep me employable in the future? I did that once with a character. It was a half elf bard, and he believed in elven supremacy, and so he wished he was like a full elf, and he was in denial that his dad, who was like a super famous musician, was a human, and he was in denial that he was a half elf and all this stuff. It's fun to play that sometimes because I had to like come up with slurs for humans from an elf's perspective that he used, like round ears.
Round ear.
Yeah.
Yep, that's always the good one.
Round ear, mayfly, whatever.
Mayfly?
Yeah, because they have short.
Oh, because
lives.
they're short lived.
Yeah, he was like he was like completely he was like 80 years old and he completely in denial that he was like starting to visibly age because he was a human.
Half elf. That's funny.
Yeah, because he was part human. He's like, no, I'm gonna live forever. I'm gonna live forever.
I like that a lot. That's a lot of fun. But yeah. That kind of
again, that goes back to weird little guy role playing because we were all aware that it was a joke and it wasn't like we weren't trying to sit down and deconstruct themes of race and discrimination or whatever and do a whole thing. It was just like, okay, this is the bit that I have, and then the guy next to me is an Aarakocra prince who hates his mom and dad and ran away but doesn't understand what living on the road is like, and also he's just a fucking bird man for some reason, and that's the bit. that's weird little guy role playing is you pick a gimmick and you run with it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. It can build into a really like entertaining kind of like weekly game night for you and your friends, and I think that's great if you're just playing with like you and a group of people, that you don't necessarily like. They're just you and your buddies, you and a bunch of little guys playing as little guys.
There's the question of whether or not playing TTRPGs is, are you going to sit down and do this intense acting thing, or is it a way for you to chill out with some of your friends on the weekend and just make jokes in and out of character, right? Like, people should be taking it seriously in the sense that they should be engaged with it, not like on their fucking phones or whatever. Critical Role and those actual plays, I think, give a skewed impression of what playing D&D is actually like, because it is not a bunch of professional actors sitting down with the understanding that you're going to be like, okay, we can actually have some serious, like, real character moments and all this stuff. Most of the time, in pretty much every game that I've been in, it has been get some friends together and you just kind of dick around on the weekend. I mean, if you can get actual role playing, again, more power to you. That's not something I'm able to reliably coordinate because all of the people that I know in person are little shitters who aren't really willing to commit to that. Again, not judgmental. They come off as weirdly judgy. They're just not willing. That's just not something. That's not. If you knew my friends, you would know that's not going to work with them.
It's just not their vibe.
It's just not what they're built for, and
It's
it's
not the
completely
kind
fine.
of game they want to play.
They want to play, I mean, and I play a lot of Warhammer with them, and that's fine because that's a game where you roll up and you're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna sling some dice and have some fun. And the most role playing that you usually do is like, okay, I'm gonna build my custom guy or my custom orc clan or storm host or whatever. Do we want to talk about the difficulties of playing a stoic character? Because I had some stuff to say, but you might have some more stuff to say.
Yes. So, yeah. Often, so okay, kind of almost we can go back a little bit to
I think this touches more on an actual like acting thing than even
yes.
a role playing
Oh,
specific thing.
100%. Because you can like okay. So, going back to the choices thing. The core component, especially in TTRPGs, of playing your character is making decisions. It's a cooperative storytelling environment where
Yes.
you get to make decisions, and the dungeon master decides what consequences those decisions have. That's dungeons. That's TTRPGs boiled down to the fucking fat and rind. And so when you make how you make those decisions is dependent on the type of character that you're creating. If you're that guy who is a half elf and he doesn't like humans and he's an elf purist and he thinks he's a full elf, he's going to make decisions as if he were like a purebred elf. And so that's like if he interacts with purebred elves as if he were one, depending on the setting, that might not go so well for him.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of decision making that you need to make as a character. There is, depending on the type of decisions that you're making and the weight of those decisions, there bleeds a little bit into the acting proponent of roleplay. And inherently and historically, role-playing is acting, and acting is role-playing. And not everybody that plays TTRPGs is an actor.
Nor should they be.
And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And a lot of like one of the biggest criticisms that I get about people that don't like Dungeons and Dragons is whenever there's a mix of people that do not like acting and people that do like acting, because you'll have the guy who loves being the party face and has experience playing characters and acting in an official setting or doing whatever, and is confident with himself, playing like a confident, well-spoken character, and is doing genuinely charismatic things in real life to reflect what he's doing in world.
If he's charisma mogging the rest of the basement dwelling freaks that play D&D.
Yeah, right. For the that makes it a lot easier on the DM because they don't have to like insinuate what they might be doing. They can literally just listen to the guy.
100%.
And be like, cool, that's what happens. And so a lot of DMs that I found will sometimes make the mistake of, if somebody says, I would like to persuade somebody to do this, they go, okay,
roll persuasion.
Persuade them to do that. And a lot of people go, I don't know what I would, I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to talk to people.
Right. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with going, I'd like to persuade, I want a discount. I'd like to try to persuade the shopkeeper to give me a discount. And, the DM goes, make a persuasion check. There is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong whatsoever. And so there's just a big difference in the ability of some people. And I think everybody should be able to enjoy the game regardless of your ability to actually act out what it is that your character is doing, because I wouldn't expect to make like my barbarian actually go rip my front door off its hinges when he kicks down a door in the dungeons. Although I've known some barbarian players that would, and they scare me.
I need me a woman who looks like prime Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That took such a turn.
Sorry, I've just been thinking about that recently.
Okay, I'm glad that that's what's on your mind. But so it kind of comes down to that when you play a character that is inherently difficult to roleplay, and this is often seen in things in strongly emotional characters when they are strongly like sad or distraught or stoic.
Yes.
Because if you yourself haven't experienced something like extreme grief or like extreme sadness, which God forbid nobody ever has to, um, you're going to have a hard time role playing that. And so sometimes it will come off to other players as like disingenuous when you go, I'm playing, you know, Jeremiah Brigadine, the 45-year-old grizzled veteran who's seen more death than he has saved lives. And
It's like a pasty little kid who has no idea what hardship is. Yeah.
yeah, you're like a 13-year-old, you know, right? It's like you don't know what war is. How do you can't role play that. You can't really
Yes.
play that truly. You're a 13-year-old, you're not an actor, you haven't been to war.
You haven't been to war, and you don't have the depth of acting capability to make it seem like you have.
Your frontal lobe is literally not developed enough to experience the kind of emotions that Jeremiah Brigadine would have experienced.
Not everything has to be method acting, but if you're not a professional actor, it helps to draw on stuff that you have experienced personally rather than trying
Yeah,
to
exactly. Like when I play my like super gooner horny bard, that is 1-to-1. Um right, like that's, you know, 100% accurate. But it's a lot of people want to try and explore these kind of like stoic archetypes because they're cool. You look at these people and you go, that's a cool fucking guy. I want to do that. And that is the best motivation that you can ever get for a D&D character. You see something else and you go, that's fucking cool. I want to do that. That is
Well, as long as you're not just copying the character directly.
yes, yeah, you know, don't just go, you know, that's a little
that's a different discussion. We've had that discussion before.
Yes,
That's
we have. That's a bit of a, you know, to be. You can take inspiration, but I would encourage people to be at least a little original with their character designs. Although if you're just starting out, if it's like your first thing, there's nothing wrong with that. But and so it's genuinely difficult if you don't have experience doing so to play like a stoic or a sad character. Um, and I think a lot of people will get caught up in themselves when they are unable to portray their own character in the way that they wanted to. And I think it's important to kind of keep in mind that that's not your fault. If anything, you should be glad that you are incapable of portraying the lifestyle and emotional, like, for a lack of a disgruntled, war-torn 45-year-old veteran. Like, God forbid you know how to do that.
I think even disregarding any potential tragic backstory or, you know, veterancy or whatever you're trying to copy, I think that just portraying that strong silent type while also having the gravitas to still be, you know, really there and present and not just, oh, Timmy's not saying anything. That's also a skill in and of itself. Not even, you know, portraying, oh, he's seen terrible, terrible things, but just being able to not say anything, but still have your presence be known is just a genuine, like, social skill that's most people do not
Yes.
have.
And kind of like on that too, it's literally harder to like exude that in a TTRPG setting than it is in real life because your primary tool for role playing when you're playing a TTRPG is your voice. You're speaking. You're speaking as if you were your character and you were taking the place of your
Yes.
character with your voice.
Some people dress
and yes,
up.
some people dress up and
I
stuff.
don't.
You know, but like when it boils down, you're just a bunch of nerds sitting around a table, and there's the mannerisms and body movements of significantly traumatized or emotionally in-depth people are usually what kind of makes them seem the way they are. And that is a lot. That is where you bridge the gap between playing a game and acting, I think. And so that's why I think that's why it's so much harder.
I think that it's important to not judge yourself too much, but also to know your limits. I might have mentioned this to you once. I briefly did some stage acting, and I started out with like more comedic roles, and they were easy because assuming that the joke structure is funny, and the script has that, so you're assuming that the joke itself is funny. All you need to do is execute.
Yeah, you just have to tell the joke.
You need to tell the joke in a way that's funny, and you may not believe it, but I used to be funny. Getting that sense of timing down and that all the aspects of comedy is not easy, but it was fairly straightforward, I found. And then I started doing more dramatic roles where I had to play like a grieving widower or something like that, or like a new father who has to take care of a child, and he's trying to figure out how to navigate that. That is so much harder, and that seeing myself do that in videos or whatever, that was the first time I really cringed at myself acting. Not myself being comedic and maybe not saying the joke as good as it could have, but it's still maybe fine. Seeing myself try to be this serious role, and that was the first time I was like, I don't believe this at all. I hate this. Why did I ever agree to do this? And that was why I stopped. That was why I stopped acting, because I recognized pretty quickly that I did not have the ability to continue much further with that and do anything beyond like bit comedy roles. And also, I just ran out of fucking time.
Real. This shit takes a lot of time.
Yes.
Very time-intensive activities, all of these. Do you know how fucking hard it is to get a group of 5 or 6 people to be in one place at the same time for like 4 hours?
Oh my god, more than you would imagine. When I was DMing that Dark Heresy campaign, there was a guy who was really charismatic and engaged with the game a lot and was kind of like leading the other players forward, and he was great. And he was able to make one session. Well, technically 2. He was able to make the session 0 in the first session. Even though he was only there for one session, we all felt him when he was gone, because he was really trying to engage with the story, not only like being a role player and having banter and all that stuff, but also just like, I think we should go here next. And none of the other players were really willing to do that as much. So it was harder for me as the DM to keep that train going.
Yeah, and it is hard sometimes, kind of, when you have that one guy who is the lead, because it's hard as a DM. He's they're often really great for a new time DM, because it means you don't have to drag your party through the story that you've written. If you just have one person willing to lead the group and actually participate, that takes a lot of weight off the DM's shoulders. The problem is that everybody should have a fair chance to go through the story that they were hoping to go through with their character. Now, if you're in a situation where you literally have 5 people and 4 of them are shitters that are playing Gobo the Gobbo Man, and his entire point is to be Gobo the Gobbo Man, then, they can go fucking jerk off in a hole while, Excalibur Mick Rubber Duck Man leads the party into glory and does 100% of those interactions with all of the NPCs and stuff, whatever. Sometimes that's just what you end up with. But if you have like a group of 4 or 5 people, and all of them like genuinely put time and effort into their characters and their backstories and what they expect, like what they want out of this campaign and what they want to see like their character go through as far as character development, it's hard sometimes when some people in the party don't have that kind of social vigor to step in and kind of go talk over the party face, because it's hard to be like, if you're a shy person and you're playing a shy character versus confident courageous person playing a confident courageous character, it's hard as the DM to make sure that those shy people have an equal opportunity to participate in social interactions.
I 100% agree. I would like to clarify briefly. When I say weird little guy, because you're mentioning Gobo the Gobbo Man, when I say weird little guy role-playing, I don't mean like it's just a bit. I'm saying start with a gimmick, which might be a weird race or class combination. It might be something that you get out of character creation, like weird stat distributions. It might be something entirely based in role-playing, like the idea of, a dwarf that hates magic or whatever. You start from there and you use that as the framework that you build the character around. You should still be interacting with the world, bantering with party members, trying to think, out of character, what are we doing next? How are we going to do this? When I say weird little guy role-playing, I don't mean literally have a one-note freak who doesn't try and actually engage with the story. You should still be doing
absolutely.
that.
I mean, like, who's that one guy on YouTube? I think it's like Zach D&D.
Z Bradshaw.
Hang on. D&D YouTube.
That's going to give you a lot of search
Nope,
results.
I got it. I found exactly who I was looking for. Yeah, Zach the Bold. He does a lot of like shorts and stuff.
Okay.
He's kind of popped up in the like D&D content thing in the last couple of years, and he's one of those guys that does like multi-character single actor clips where it's like him playing a bunch of different people in the short. Yeah. And he does a lot of like like skits where it's a serious party with Gabo the Goobo Man, and it's like session after session, and Gabo the Goobo Man just gets more and more serious because he keeps playing through the campaign and ends up like building a story for this gimmick character anyways.
We call that locking in, or the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god. yeah, the Lord of the Rings one took a second.
I agree that in the role-playing party setting, it's important to know when to step in and not just be completely passive. I think it's also a skill to try and leave space for other people, which is something that I am very self-conscious about the way that I present myself, in case you haven't noticed. And I worry often that I talk too much, because that was something did not talk very much at all when I was in my formative years, and everyone just thought I was strange and creepy. And to counteract it, I just started, like trying to make conversation and do all that stuff, and I found that I would leave space, try and let other people talk if they wanted to, and nobody would. So I would just kind of keep talking. And playing D&D, getting back into that after I was out of it for several years, I think I credit that with developing more of a sense of when to talk and when not to talk, and when to be, I'm trying to drive this forward and interact with the world and give thoughts on what we should do next, and also just kind of banter, and when I should let other people have the spotlight. And I'm still not perfect at that, but I think that playing D&D genuinely helped me with that, because a lot of the times when I would play D&D, it would be me and one or two other people who were like actually like trying to play and were really invested, and it would be one person who would be a munchkin of some variety, who was only really there for the combat, and there would be one other person who was usually like a friend of a friend that I didn't know super well, who was there because we needed to fill out a spot in the party, and who kind of didn't really know D&D super well and was just there and was kind of like, this is weird and kind of stupid, and not really willing to engage with it at all in any capacity. And that was how I played a lot of D&D, and that's not a great party comp, but it's, I think, a realistic party comp for a lot of people, more so than playing with, a bunch of actors who are really into this. Yeah. I don't know how to end that thought, but I thought that it needed to be said.
I think it was a good thought that was said. But anyways, yeah, I found the specific short that I was referencing.
Yes. Let's see. Stuck in a joke character, D&D short.
You're playing the gnome paladin Chudbert, who only says, "Uh-oh, I filled up my pants."
What the fuck, man? You're a fucking freak.
It's a funny video, I swear.
No, I have been guilty of doing joke characters, but mostly for one-shots. I am a big fan of the high-level one-shot grind set, where it's like, okay, we're going to miss a week because our normal players, one or two of our normal players are going to be out of town. Fuck it, make a level 25 character, and I found a weird stat block. We're just going to fight this. I am a big fan of DMing and playing those.
Real.
They're fun. They rarely go as well as you think they will because either it ends up being too easy or too strong. And I made the mistake of playing one of those with the Munchkin friend. He's a good guy, but he only knows the meta. And I was like, oh yeah, you can do a fun thing at high levels. And he made a thing that was, if you put him up against a humanoid enemy, he was able to just trip them every single turn. And I think that the enemies I was using just weren't able to pass that check, whatever it was. And so he just kept tripping and stabbing dudes on the ground. And it was like, well, this is anticlimactic. Fuck you, here's a gargantuan creature.
Mm-hmm. God, I think I'm like scrolling through my characters on D&D Beyond, and I'm realizing that like I've made a fair number of joke characters and like played them for shorter campaigns in the past, and I think I'm actually physically incapable of sticking with a bit. And by that I mean like
I feel
but like in the way that I never keep it as a joke character. I always end up adding like way more depth than you would initially expect. Like here's my favorite one. He's a bugbear archfey warlock, and his name is Boluar Jumpscare. And the whole gimmick is he jump scares people with his fey magic powers, and he's a bugbear, and it's funny because he's a bugbear.
So he's just fucking Foxy leaping across.
Yes, but I needed backstory. I needed a reason for the way he was. You need
lore for Boluar
Jumpscare. And so what I came up with was he's an archfey warlock, and he's a funny guy. So he's a gambler. He's a gambling addict, and that's how he became a warlock of the archfey. He ended up like at a bar in the fey realm and gambled he ran out of money, so he gambled his soul to an archfey, and that's how he became a warlock. And his like whole character is hiding this like crippling gambling addiction that he has, but it's like it's not like funny, oh haha, I'm gonna throw away the party's money. I think I'm literally incapable of doing that. I was genuinely like seriously playing this guy as if he were like his whole existence was a mask trying to hide the fact that he is literally and figuratively a shell of the person he could have been because of this horrible addiction.
I do like it when bits take on a life of their own and kind of become somewhat serious. You get used to the absurdity of it, and you're actually able to do stuff with it. It's like the good ending of that Piss Forest comic.
It is. And I will say, this only happens when I actually play the character, or when I think about playing the character. Because I do have this one other joke character, and his name's Max Darlin, and he's a gay cowboy, and that's it. But then we've also got like
I mean, I think it's self-explanatory. I don't think you need to go further with that.
We have like Gary Gnomer. He's a gnome. And I made him. So I introduced Gary Gnomer to all these guys, and I ended up giving a backstory. Like he's an artificer. He's an alchemist artificer because he used to work as like an alchemist at like an apothecary, and he's in serious debt because he didn't know what taxes were, so he never paid his taxes. So that's why he appeared in this setting, because he's paying off his debt. He's actually been running from the fantasy IRS. So I've never played him in the same campaign more than once.
I think that you can run the bit into the ground pretty easily, but I am still a fan of fantasy people in normal situations. Like, you've seen Smiling Friends, right? The episode where they go to Brazil and it's just 10 minutes of cartoon characters arguing in the airport about who forgot to book the hotel. That's like, I love that, because it's just an entirely like normal conversation, but one of the dudes is green and one of the dudes is purple, or whatever the colors are. And I just love that, because it's just completely realistic stuff in a fantasy setting. I want to see a hobgoblin who's working at a Wawa, and he's just like depressed, and he's just got to force a smile on his face, and the other register is closed, and there's just a hobgoblin in a uniform sitting behind the counter, and he's reaching to get some smoke.
100%. Or even like flipping that on its head. And this is definitely not because I have like a deep unsettling admiration for the isekai genre, but normal people in fantasy settings I think is just as funny. And I mean, like, when they're not given any kind of special power or they're not chosen or whatever. I'm talking about like Jake from State Farm is now in Middle Earth. And
we were talking about like the prevalence of fantasy races in fantasy settings and whether it should be, you know, mostly human, mostly like weird other stuff like Aarakocra or not Kenshi. What's the other? All the D&D keeps putting out a million splat books. Kenku, yes, the other like bird people. D&D keeps putting out a million splat books per year, and it's like, oh, there's like a Warforge and there's a this, that, and the other thing, and it's like, what happened to the original like PHB races? I don't even see them as much anymore comparatively. I really like the idea of a world where humans are the rarity, and it's not really like most DMs in my experience don't go really far into making it feel like, oh, you're an unusual race. We should make a big deal about that, which again makes sense because leaning into the fantasy racism is a slippery slope unless you really know what you're doing. Very. But I do like the idea that it's a bunch of humans and a 9-foot-tall dragon dude, and they just don't care about him. And you invert it, and now it's all 9-foot-tall dragon dudes, and there's one human, and he's just there, and nobody makes a remark about it.
I do love that. I am a big fan of that.
It seems like the conversation is petering out.
Man,
now. Holy shit!
What a discussion.
Do we want to end this by briefly talking about role-playing through Discord and how that sucks? I don't think this is an unpopular opinion.
No, I don't think this is an unpopular opinion, but I actually have particular experience with this opinion because I was always so very staunch on like I only wanted to play in person. I didn't want to fuck around with online D&D. But it came to a point where I could only find like little shitter gooner boys to play with where I went to college. And I said, you know what? Fuck this. I'm just gonna play with my old friends online, and we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna make it work. And you know what that proved to me? That proved that the people you play with are more important than how you play.
Would you consider me a little shitter gooner boy?
Nah, you're like one tier above that.
How many tiers are there?
Probably like half a dozen.
Okay.
Six is like Matthew Mercer. I'd placed myself at like a 4. Shitty little. I think you're probably like a low 3.
In fairness, the campaign that we're in right now, I am trying to do the stoic character through Discord, which is not a great look.
Doesn't work. That actually just doesn't work.
When I got back into D&D in college, I think I peaked at around a 4 too, if we're using the same scale. But that was also, I looked way better in comparison to some of the people that I was playing with. So,
100%.
I fully understand the wanting to play in person. I think that Discord TTRPGs really don't work. I've mostly played it with 2 different groups, and one of them was me, a friend of mine, a friend of that friend, and a friend of that friend's friend, which just fantastic start.
Yes, very.
And the DM was he was weird. He was also obsessed with isekai, but he didn't have an ounce of self-awareness, and made it like a weird adventuring guild complete with weirdly horny moments that made everyone uncomfortable. And yeah, also it was full of weird homebrew stuff. So one of the dudes was playing a gentleman, which I'm not sure what that I think this is a 5e homebrew class. It's like a paladin, but if he hurts a woman in any capacity, he just loses his powers until he can
What the
apologize.
fuck?
And he killed the. I only played like half a dozen sessions with these people, and he killed the bad guy who was a woman, and then just his character was just useless. And he was like, "Okay, so can I cast Speak with Dead to like talk to this person or find someone who can do that?" And the DM was like, "No." So he just made a new character. And I was a stand
that's
user.
insane.
That was my character. I was just playing the
Oh,
stand
yes,
user
this
class.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just had not Silver Chariot. That was a weird. Looking back on it, that was a weird campaign and a weird friend who I do not speak to anymore.
Yeah, that holy shit, that sounds like a real fucking collection of shit going on there.
Yeah, this was also all through Discord, and I only knew one of the people really well. And then also one of the reasons why that stopped was the entire like friend group that I was orbiting had a falling out because somebody like said something mean to someone else during a League of Legends match, and it just like escalated from there. I don't know. I wasn't fucking
What
there
the hell?
but League of Legends has ruined multiple friend groups I've been.
League of Legends
of,
ruins most things,
my,
just kind of in general.
Yeah, and I have played League of Legends in the past, but like 3 games. Did I tell you there was a point where all of my friends were into League of Legends and Magic, and I was annoyed by that, so I briefly tried to get into Dota and Yu-Gi-Oh!
To spite them?
Be like, yeah, to spite them, but then I realized I don't enjoy those kinds of games, and this is stupid.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that.
That's good for you. Good for you.
I only spend my time on valuable pursuits like Warhammer.
100%.
God, what were we even fucking talking about? I think, yeah, we're in the petering out stage, so we do need to find something to talk about. What is your favorite CRPG?
My favorite what?
CRPG, computer RPG.
Like, as in like a game?
Yes, like a video game. Because we normally do our famous segment where we look at weird games on Steam.
Honestly, that's a good question. I think like let's see. If I had to pick, you know what? Starbound. That Starbound is a phenomenal game and has so much room for roleplay. And funnily enough, I end up role-playing...
Jesus Christ, 204 hours? That's what you have?
I love this game. I end up role-playing more in this game than I do in, like, other actual role-playing games.
I was expecting you to say, like, Baldur's Gate or one of those, but...
Nah, Baldur's Gate's cool and whatever, but I play enough D&D. Starbound is the shit. I will never not, like... hype this game. I fucking love this game. It is genuinely like top contenders for one of the best games of all time. It is just, it's so well made. It's published by Chucklefish, the same people that published Stardew Valley. And so it kind of has that same pixel art graphic-y vibe.
And they're in the same universe, right?
100%. And it's just it's such a well-made game. It's a lot of people will equate it to just Terraria and space, and yeah, that is kind of the vibe that you go for. It's 2D. You have a ship. You can decorate the ship however you want, and the construction of your ship depends on like the species that you choose to play in the beginning. And the general story is that like some evil corruption erupted on like this world, and you have to figure out how to stop it. And you like visit each like the home world of each of the races in game, and you do like challenges to get an item and you fight a boss and stuff. But aside from all of that, there's also planetary exploration and base building and settlement construction and like NPCs, and the NPCs in your settlements will give you missions to do, and they can give you items, and there's crafting, and like you can make farms and stuff, and there's so much to this game, and it's all done so well that it makes it so easy to like fall into whatever role you choose for yourself. And I love that for it.
I should really. I last played it 7 years ago, and I have 3 hours in it, so I should really.
I think you should give it another try.
Give it another shot.
It is a
Seems-
very good game. I will always say good things about Starbound. Yeah.
My favorite role-playing game is The Elder Scrolls Redguard, Elder Scrolls Adventure.
Why? Because you're like pretending you're black and successful.
Yeah. I think that's going to do it for the podcast episode today. Anyway, yeah, and if you are our one subscriber and you're not a bot, comment in the comment section below, and
I'll Venmo you $5.
Yes, yeah, put your Venmo information in the comment section below, and we will send you $5 each. Yeah, have a good one. Drive safe.
Eat your vegetables.